The night it all began, I sat at a long dining table surrounded by my husband's family. The chandeliers glowed above us. The plates of expensive food sat untouched in front of me. But I felt smaller than I had ever felt in my life. My mother-in-law leaned forward with her sharp eyes, her lips curling into a smirk. "Emily," she said loudly enough for every guest to hear, "why are you sitting?" "The dishes are piling up." "A servant shouldn't eat before the family." Laughter erupted across the table. My hands trembled, my face flushed hot, but I stayed frozen in my chair. When I turned to my husband, my partner, the man who promised to protect me, he didn't defend me. He didn't say a word. Instead, he laughed. He laughed when I cried. And in that moment, as his eyes sparkled with cruelty, I whispered under my breath so softly only I could hear, "One day, you'll regret this." Before that night, I was just a woman in love. My name is Emily. I came from a middle-class family, raised with kindness and dignity, though not with much money. When I met Michael, he seemed like a dream. Handsome, educated, wealthy, charming. He swept me off my feet. His family lived in a grand house, drove luxury cars, and walked into restaurants like they owned the world. I thought I was marrying into security, into love, into a family who would cherish me. But instead, I married into a nightmare disguised as luxury. At first, it was little comments. "You should learn to dress like us. Your accent sounds provincial. You don't really fit in, do you?" But soon the comments became commands. My mother-in-law made me clean after her guests. My father-in-law gave me shopping lists like I was an employee. And Michael, my husband, the man who once promised to protect me from the world, watched silently. Sometimes he joined them. One afternoon, as I carefully placed tea on a silver tray, my sister-in-law sneered and said, "Look at you, just like the maid. Only difference is the maid gets paid." Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. That night, I cried in my room, my body shaking with silent sobs. And when Michael walked in, I begged him, "Please, just tell them to stop. Please stand by me." He looked at me coldly. "Stop being so dramatic, Emily. This is the price of living in a rich family. You should be grateful. Grateful." That word burned into my chest like fire. The humiliation might have continued forever, if not for the night I discovered Michael's final betrayal. I found messages on his phone. Not just any messages, flirtatious words, secret meetings, hotel bookings. He wasn't just mocking me with his family. He was cheating on me with another woman. When I confronted him, tears streaming down my face, he didn't apologize. He didn't deny it either. He simply smirked. "You cry too much. Maybe she's better because she knows how to smile." And then he laughed. That laugh carved something inside me. It killed the old Emily, the weak, begging Emily, and birthed someone else. Someone who would never forgive. Someone who would never forget. The next morning, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even argue. I packed my bags in silence. For the first time in years, I looked at myself in the mirror. Not at the broken servant his family tried to make me, but at the woman I truly was. I walked downstairs with my suitcase. My mother-in-law scoffed. "Running away? You'll be back. Girls like you always come crawling back." But I didn't answer. I looked at Michael one last time. His eyes were mocking, confident, sure that I had nowhere to go, and I said only one thing. "You'll see me again. But when you do, you'll wish you hadn't." Then I walked out. At first, it wasn't easy. Divorce in a conservative high society circle wasn't something people forgave easily. My own friends whispered behind my back. Strangers judged me, but I didn't care. I found work. Small at first, a consultancy role at a mid-level firm. I was smart, educated, sharper than Michael ever gave me credit for. I built myself up, one late night, one long hour at a time. And it was at that office, in that new world of independence, that fate gave me something unexpected. I met David. David wasn't like Michael. He wasn't flashy or arrogant. He was calm, commanding, and deeply respected. He owned companies across multiple industries. He walked into a room and people fell silent, not out of fear, but out of respect. But what shocked me most was not his power. It was his kindness. When he saw me working late one evening, exhausted but determined, he didn't look down on me. He simply smiled and said, "Strength looks good on you." No one had ever said that to me before. Months turned into years. I grew closer to David, not because of his wealth, but because he treated me as an equal. When he proposed, it wasn't with arrogance, it was with respect. And so, I became Mrs. Emily David. This time, there was no humiliation, no laughter at my pain, no betrayal. But the story didn't end there, because while my life rose higher than I'd ever imagined, Michael's life began to crumble. The same arrogance that destroyed my dignity began destroying his family's fortune. Michael invested recklessly, took loans he couldn't repay, and trusted the wrong people. His father's business empire collapsed, one deal at a time. The luxury cars were sold, the mansion mortgaged, the servants dismissed, and the same friends who once laughed at me, they disappeared from Michael's life when the money ran out. I didn't seek them out. I didn't gloat, but destiny had other plans, because one day, Michael, once the man who laughed at my tears, would walk into an office desperate for help. And sitting across that office table would be David. And me. Michael once thought money made him untouchable. He carried himself like a king, and his family believed their empire would never end. But life has a cruel way of showing the truth. It started with a single failed investment. Michael had poured millions into a luxury hotel project in Dubai, convinced it would triple his fortune. He bragged about it at dinner parties, showing off glossy brochures and fake smiles. But when the project collapsed due to fraud and poor management, Michael lost not only money, he lost credibility. The investors he had charmed vanished overnight. His name, once associated with success, became associated with stupidity. At first, his family brushed it off. "It's only one project," his father said, sipping his expensive whiskey. "We have plenty of wealth." But one project led to another. One failure became two. Two became four. The cracks spread like poison through their empire. Even as debts piled up, the family refused to change their ways. His mother still threw extravagant tea parties, pretending nothing was wrong. His sister still traveled to Paris for shopping, maxing out credit cards like the bills would never come due. And Michael? He pretended everything was fine. He smiled at his colleagues, posted luxury photos online, and mocked anyone who suggested he tighten his belt. But the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. Creditors began calling. Bankers stopped answering his phone. Business partners stopped inviting him to meetings. The empire that once seemed like stone was now sand slipping through their fingers. While Michael's world crumbled, Emily's new life was flourishing. She had built herself with patience, with hard work, and with the support of David. Unlike Michael, David didn't gamble with money. He studied markets, invested wisely, and built networks of respect. Emily grew into her role as his partner, not just a wife, but a trusted advisor. She learned about business, strategy, and leadership. People respected her not because of David's name, but because of her own sharp mind and calm presence. For the first time, she wasn't a servant at the table. She was seated at the head of it, and every time she remembered Michael's mocking laugh, she smiled quietly to herself. She didn't need to chase revenge. It was already finding its way to him. The first visible crack in Michael's family wealth came when they lost their mansion. The grand house that once sparkled with chandeliers and marble floors was now filled with silence. The banks repossessed it, selling it to another rich family. Michael's mother cried as she packed her jewelry. His father shouted at servants who were no longer there. His sister screamed about unfairness, refusing to believe she would no longer have a driver waiting for her. Michael himself walked through the empty halls in disbelief. The walls that once echoed with arrogance now echoed with nothing. When they moved into a smaller house, barely half the size, his mother hissed, "This is your fault, Michael. You've destroyed us." For the first time in his life, Michael had no defense. Wealth attracts false friends. Michael learned this the hard way. When he was rich, his phone never stopped ringing. Men invited him to golf clubs, women smiled at him, acquaintances begged to sit at his table. But once the money disappeared, so did they. His calls went unanswered. His messages left unseen. The same people who once laughed at Emily now laughed at him behind his back. Michael began to taste the same loneliness he once forced on me. Inside their new, smaller home, chaos reigned. His mother cursed him daily. "You were supposed to grow the business, not destroy it." His father shouted until his voice broke. "All my life I built this name and you wasted it." His sister sneered. "Maybe if you had married a smarter woman than Emily, we wouldn't be here." At that, Michael flinched. He remembered me. The woman he had laughed at, mocked, betrayed. The woman he drove away. For the first time, a small voice inside him whispered, maybe Emily was the strong one. Maybe I was the fool. But he pushed the thought away. His pride was too big. Months passed. Michael tried everything to save himself. He borrowed money from loan sharks, sinking deeper into debt. He tried launching small businesses, each one failing faster than the last. He begged old partners to take him back, but none trusted him. One evening, as he sat alone in a dim office staring at unpaid bills, Michael felt something he had never felt before. Fear. The fear of being nothing, the same fear he once accused me of. While Michael was sinking, I was soaring. With David, I traveled to conferences abroad, where I met leaders, investors, and innovators. At every event, I was introduced not just as David's wife, but as Emily, the strategist. People listened when I spoke. They took notes. They respected me. And late at night, when David would pour me tea and ask, "Do you ever think of your past?" I would smile softly. Yes, I'd say. But not with pain. With gratitude. Because without that pain, I wouldn't know the taste of this peace. It wasn't long before Michael reached his breaking point. He had lost his house, his cars, his so-called friends, his reputation. He was drowning in debt, with creditors knocking on his door, threatening lawsuits. One night, he sat at a cheap wooden table with his mother and father. There was no feast anymore, just bread and tea. His mother's eyes were red. His father's hands shook with age and anger. His sister refused to eat, scrolling on her broken phone like the screen could hide reality. Michael put his head in his hands and whispered, "We need help. We need someone powerful enough to save us." That night, for the first time in his life, Michael prayed. Desperation makes men crawl. And crawl Michael did. He begged businessmen he once mocked. He wrote proposals late into the night, sending them to every investor he could find. Most ignored him. Some laughed. Until one day, a small ray of hope appeared. A colleague told him, "There's a man, a powerful investor. If he likes your pitch, he can save you." Michael clung to the words like a drowning man clings to driftwood. "Who is he?" The colleague whispered a name that had begun to spread across the city like fire. David. Michael didn't know then that David was my husband. He prepared his documents nervously, rehearsing his pitch in front of a cracked mirror. For the first time, Michael wasn't arrogant. He was desperate. He wore his only remaining good suit, polished his old shoes, and walked into the grand building where David's company operated. As he sat in the waiting area, clutching his proposal, Michael whispered to himself, "This is it. This is my last chance." Little did he know. The woman he once called worthless, the woman he drove out in tears, would be the one standing between him and salvation. The secretary finally called his name. "Mr. Michael, you may enter." Michael stood, adjusted his tie, and pushed open the door to the grand office. At the head of the room sat David, calm, powerful, unreadable. But then, another figure entered from the side. Elegant, graceful, confident, Michael froze. His hands trembled. His face turned pale. It was me, Emily, his ex-wife. The woman he had once laughed at. And now I was standing beside the only man who could save him. The silence in that room was louder than thunder. Michael stood frozen in the doorway of David's office. His feet felt heavy, like he was walking into a courtroom instead of a business meeting. Behind the wide mahogany desk sat David, composed, powerful, his sharp eyes watching every move. On the left side of the room stood me, Emily, dressed in a simple yet elegant suit, holding files in my hand, calm and steady as if the whole room belonged to me. Michael's lips parted, but no words came out. His eyes darted between us. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. For a few seconds, silence ruled the air. Then I spoke first. "Hello, Michael." "It's been a long time." Michael's throat tightened. He tried to smile, but it twisted awkwardly. "Emily." "I didn't expect," I cut him off, my voice steady. "No, you didn't expect. You never did. That was always your weakness." His face turned red. He looked down, fumbling with his papers, pretending to regain composure. David leaned back in his chair, watching quietly. He wanted me to lead this. He knew this was my moment. Michael cleared his throat and placed his proposal on the table. His hands trembled. "I've prepared a business plan," he said. "If funded, it can bring high returns. I'm here, seeking an investor." His voice cracked on the word seeking, a word Michael had never liked because he was used to commanding. I flipped through his documents slowly, deliberately. Each page screamed desperation. Outdated data, unrealistic numbers. Nothing like the arrogance he once flaunted. When I looked up, I saw sweat glistening on his forehead. David finally spoke. "So, why should I invest in you, Michael?" Michael straightened. "Because I know business. I've had success in the past. I just need one chance to rise again." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the kind of success where you gamble everything and laugh while people around you suffer?" Michael's jaw tightened. He looked like a child caught lying. The memory of that night, when he laughed as I cried, flashed before my eyes. His mocking voice still echoed in my ears, but now, he was the one desperate. "Emily," Michael whispered, his voice breaking. "Please, you know me. You know I'm not like this. Help me." Just this once, I leaned forward. My words came sharp, each one like a blade. "You're wrong, Michael. I do know you, and that's exactly why I won't help you." His face fell. His lips trembled as if he might cry right there. Pride abandoned him. The man who once strutted with arrogance now knelt with words. He clasped his hands together, his eyes wet. "Emily, listen. I was foolish. I made mistakes. I treated you badly. But I've changed. Don't let me fall like this. You can save me." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the irony was too sharp. I remembered how I once begged him to show me kindness. How I once asked him to stand by me when I needed him, and how he laughed. "Do you remember, Michael?" I asked softly. "The night I cried and you laughed," he froze. His mouth opened, then shut again. "You told me I didn't need anyone. That I only had you. But the truth is, you never gave me anything except pain." His tears spilled. For the first time, Michael wept openly. David finally leaned forward, his deep voice filling the room. "Mr. Michael, business is built on trust, discipline, and respect. Qualities you clearly lack." Michael looked at him desperately. "Please, I'll prove myself. Give me just one chance, please." David's expression remained calm, but his next words struck like thunder. "I don't invest in failures, and I don't rescue men who destroy others." Michael's head dropped. His last hope was slipping away. I stood, gathering the files in my hands. I walked slowly around the table, standing right in front of him. He couldn't meet my eyes. "Michael," I said, my voice steady, cold but not cruel. You once believed you could own people, that you could crush hearts and walk away. But today you learned something important. I leaned closer so only he could hear. People cannot be owned. And pain does not last forever. But arrogance? It always destroys. He broke down. His shoulders shook. He buried his face in his hands, crying harder than I had ever seen. And for the first time, I felt no pain, only peace. David rose and gestured to the guards outside. Show him out. Two men stepped in, gently but firmly guiding Michael toward the door. He turned back one last time, his eyes swollen. Emily, please. Don't leave me like this. I looked at him calmly. I didn't leave you, Michael. You left me the night you laughed when I cried. This is just the end of the story you wrote yourself. The doors shut behind him with a heavy thud. When the room was quiet again, I let out a long breath. David placed his hand on mine. You were strong, he said softly. You gave him more mercy than he ever deserved. I nodded. Yes, because true revenge isn't in cruelty. It's in living better than they ever imagined. Months later, Michael and his family slipped into complete obscurity. Their name vanished from business circles. Their debt swallowed what little they had left. Rumors spread of Michael working small jobs, his once proud figure now a shadow. The man who once mocked me was now mocked by the world. Meanwhile, my life flourished. David and I expanded our businesses, built schools, supported charities. We created a name built on respect, not arrogance. And every time I stood on a stage or signed a contract, I remembered that night of laughter and tears. Not with bitterness, but with gratitude, because his cruelty became my strength. His betrayal became my blessing. Life has a way of flipping the script. The ones who mock you today may be the ones begging tomorrow, so never doubt your worth. Never let their laughter break you, because when you rise, your revenge will be louder than any of their mockery. That was my story. Tell me, have you ever been laughed at when you were at your lowest? Share your story in the comments, and remember, subscribe for more real stories of betrayal, courage, and sweet revenge, because sometimes what feels like the end is only the beginning of your rise.